Alright, welcome back everyone to After Capture here. This is just a little video series where I edit a photo from a recent photo trip that I took on. And so for this one I have from Germantown Metro Park. Is a part of the long flowing body of water called the Twin Creek that goes right through there. And so there I found this beautiful waterfall. It had a very nice flow to it. It was probably about my height, around the 5-6 feet kind of drop there. And it was just a gorgeous display of just water flowing. So I really liked how it looked, and when I went there actually to film my on location video for Germantown Metro Park, the lighting was very it was just not good for waterfall photography or any kind of long exposure of that sort. And so I was really just kind of kicking myself. I mean, it was out of my control technically, but the lighting was just blue skies. It was just created all these harsh reflections and just blown out highlights just all over the water when I was there, which was just really unfortunate. So for that day I didn't take any real photos of this waterfall, just some quick documentary kind of footage and such. So then I just been thinking for, I took about a week in between that and taking this image at least in particular, and a whole host of other ones as well. I took about a week just thinking over, I really wanted to kind of go back and really photograph that waterfall. I was getting really very eager to, photograph it in better light. And so about a week passed in between me filming that on location video and then me actually going back, because it was a nice cloudy, rainy, kind of overcast day. The lighting was perfect for what it, called for, at least in my mind. Nice and cloudy, gray skies. And the way this waterfall is really interesting, the way it's situated in kind of like a wooded ravine, just right, you pretty much have to hike downhill, and you could easily, if you weren't listening for it, but it's loud enough you can hear it from up high on the hilltop trailhead or trail side, you could easily miss it. And not only that, but just physically the location, you can't see the trail quite as easily, at least I think most people couldn't, and you have to go downhill, and it's kind of woodsy, developed or underdeveloped really. So it was kind of, at least the first time I was there, kind of harder to see at least. But you just kind of have to follow a lot of these waterfalls, especially the more out of the way ones, the smaller ones. You just have to follow the sound of it, and that's pretty much what I did for this. The first time I found it, and the second time, of course. And yeah, just follow the sound of the flowing water. It should be loud enough that you probably fortunately hear it, I would think. So anyways, without further ado, we're going to start editing this image here. Really looking forward to it. It's nice to finally scratch off that on the list, because it can really, I don't know about you or any photographers, but it can drive me insane not passing up a photo opportunity like this just because of the lighting, which happens so many times. I mean, it's just the harsh reality really of what we do. So, but I took the time and went back and finally photographed it, which was nice. Looking at different sliders here, I'm editing on, as always, on Skylum Luminar, and at least the one that works well on my computer, at least runs on my computer at least. So where do I start? I guess I'll start with the settings. Got ISO 100. I was shooting at 16 millimeters, nice wide kind of focal length on there. And then for this particular image, did lots of horizontal ones, offsetting the main flows to, either the left or right. But for this one in particular, I tried to do a vertical, putting more emphasis on obviously the foreground element, such as the flowing portion that's right here at the kind of first and foremost at the front. And it also has all the different kind of mossy stones and rocks that were all around me that I stood atop and had my tripod propped up nearby. So yeah, this is a nice, interesting kind of composition, just photographing it kind of straight on there. But the 16 millimeters kind of brings, like I said, more out in the foreground detail, and it brings a little more interest to it as well. And then also you can tell over here, this little swirl that, that became a really interesting little part of the image. No matter which angle I took it at, it would always have that little swirl, and no matter how long the shutter was kept open for. And then for my aperture, f13 provided enough sufficient depth of field, I think, from front to back in this image, using the Canon 16 to 35 f4, which is a beautiful lens, nice and sharp throughout the whole entire focal range there. And it all worked out pretty well, I think. It's a nice little image in black and white. It does look pretty nice. I've tried it, just before this video, and it looks really effective. So I usually follow the same kind of handful of sliders whenever I edit images, just to kind of keep my kind of editing style and my workflow pretty consistent. So most of these are ones I use for, quite frankly, for all my images. Not always. Not all of them call for the same amount, like the same amount on the slider or even the sliders themselves, but more or less this is what I use for probably majority of my images, really. But so I got clarity on here. I just bumped up to 16. I feel like that worked pretty well in this case. And then you can see from my histogram up here, nice, fairly even exposure, which is nice. And that clarity really, it just kind of added a small little kind of pop of color, as the name suggests, adds a little bit more clarity to the actual image itself. Excellent AI filter. This one kind of fulfills the same thing. It brings out more into pretty much the entire frame. Now I must mention these aren't masks. These are actual global sliders. So if you let them so dictate, they will affect the entire image when you're editing it. So depending on what the slider is, of course. But using masks is a little bit more different. You can make it more selective with that, and working with layers there. I'll leave the sharpening for last. Typically, when photo editing, you want to leave sharpening for last, just that way you can sharpen at the end, and all the different. You've worked the rest of the image pretty much, and then you just sharpen at the end, so you don't make the wrong things sharp. How many times can I say sharp though? Yeah. Also got sharpening here, or details enhancer. I think this time I'm going to use sharpening itself, and I feel like that will work pretty nicely. And this is one I've been using this a lot actually, in my kind of long exposure waterfall water images. It's called the Orton effect, and it's becoming a more popular, I think, slider and effect filter or whatever to use on whatever kind of image editing software you have. And the Orton effect simultaneously sharpens and blurs parts of the image. It can kind of intelligently kind of pick apart which parts it wants to use basically for sharpening and blurring. So I'll just put it 100%. You can see how it kind of makes this, obviously kind of just made a really blurry mess here. That looks more like an artsy kind of technique, like if someone just was experimenting, which I can totally respect that. But for what I do in my photography, I want to keep it by and large as realistic as possible, and that's pretty much my end goal with the photographs I take. So we'll go back to start, and there's two types of it. I typically go type 1, at least for what I'm doing here. Now, as always, I pretty much always will keep it sliders at under 100%. You don't want to be fully, left or right. If it's one of the sliders in the middle, of course, but this one goes from left to right. So I'm going to keep it at 20, I think. I think it's a nice look to it. See how it brings out more, pretty much provides more contrast, at least in this case. Puts more shadows, especially on this leaf pile up front, kind of towards the foreground on the left here, and then the shadows on the kind of the rocky cliffside that's right underneath the waterfall where it drops down. And that's important too, because the contrast from there, it brings more distance, I think, at least in the light and the tones, and it makes the water stand out more overall. Because if I bump down the contrast to basically non-existent and brought out the shadows, or even use the shadow slider and pretty pretty much brought light to that entire section, then it just, it wouldn't provide as much contrast, and it'd make the waterfall a lot less noticeable. So it weren't effect, of course, saves the day in this case. I can adjust the brightness here. I can bring it up a little bit more, not too much, nothing too extreme here. And I mean, overall it looks nice. The red leaves in the background, the orange and red leaves really, kind of gives me this autumnal feel. So it does not feel like an image I took in February as it was, and it just makes a nice little kind of look for the seasons. It really doesn't look like the season it's in, but then again, it's hard to tell with this kind of more cropped in feel from the vertical composition and the orientation there. And from there, you can artificially add a polarizer filter. You can tell it kind of basically blues the water, makes it less white. I'll put a little bit on there just cause. And from there, sharpened a little bit. I will do one more. I know I did say sharpening would be last, but I'll do one more thing here because this shouldn't really affect the overall image quality and the sharpness. But I'm going to see if filter is an idea to use. You can just see how it looked a lot more flat overall from the start, but now it looks a lot better. Yeah, I mean, it's image editing to me. I think I'm done with this. Let me just say that now. Image editing to me is very you don't want to overdo it, of course. I know I say that in pretty much every video, and I know I'm not the only one that says that as well, but you want to do it just enough where it doesn't look, overdone and all that. So you can see from my before and after, as I just showed, not much was really done, but it was done because I feel like it really improved the image, and it made it look overall a lot better and more effective of a photograph there. You want to use image editing to enhance what you do, really. And it's not meant to, as everyone says, it's not meant to just save an image. I mean, I've tried that before and it can work, if you crop out distracting elements or clone them out. But overall, by and large, you want to use image editing just to, further enhance the image and make it look more interesting and effective for whatever kind of subject matter you're doing there. And so in this case, I just made it, like I said, pumped out the colors and contrast a little bit more, and made it more of an interesting to look at, effective waterfall photograph instead of the first image when I started, which by honesty looked very nice, but I definitely prefer the second one just because it like I said, brings up more detail and all that sorts. Alright, so I exported the image and saved it. So yeah, it's pretty much it, guys. This has been this Twin Creek waterfall here. I've been editing here, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them down below. And if you want to purchase some photo editing software, use my affiliate link down in the description there. It gives me a little portions back of the sale, which helps support making videos like this in the future for Skylum Luminar here. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, make sure to edit your photos and get out there. Thank you.